We're in Kharkiv. We've been talking to people who say that they've organized the first ever all robotic assault on a Russian position. It seems to have gone quite successfully, and we're investigating that and seeing exactly how it works and what that means for the future of the war here.
And I mean, that sounds absolutely fascinating. Can you tell me a bit more about it?
So yeah, it's a group called the Hartier Brigade. They have deployed kind of remote control robots which have machine guns attached to the top of them. It's the first time that they've been used in a kind of platoon-size force against a Russian position. And what happened was those robots advanced on the Russian position, some over several kilometers. They have a low profile. They're quite difficult to spot, especially in kind of snowy, muddy fields. And several of those robots engaged the Russians and basically suppressed their enemy fire with very accurate rifle fire, which is aided by AI. And then another robot went and dropped off two anti-tank mines that then detonated inside the Russian position, blowing it up completely.
And how many robots did you see?
Well, they've been quite secretive about how many robots are involved in it. You can see in the video there's definitely three. We went to visit the brigade and we saw about 5 or 6 robots, them using them in the field, showing us how they work and how they practice. But they're quite secretive about exactly how many robots they're able to deploy in this way.
Understandably so. Are you having any idea so far as into how much impact they're actually having using this new kind of warfare?
Well, it seems to be very much in the testing stage. They're seeing what works and what doesn't work, and they're advancing technology to go along with it. I mean, one of the drawbacks of these robots originally was that they couldn't go very far because they're ground based, and it's difficult to provide a wireless signal to them along the floor. Now they've seemed to have fixed that by relaying signal via drones that are in the air, so they can travel much further, several kilometers now. The targeting seems to be better with AI. They've fixed some of the problems with moving over kind of frozen or rutted grounds. But there are several different companies developing quite quickly these different robotics, and there has yet to be a kind of consolidated purchase by the Ukrainian government that would allow them to scale up this endeavor. And I think that's what we need to see, that the Ukrainian government to decide which ones are effective, what are the most effective drones to use in this way, and how could they do that. And we spoke also to factory producing drones different from the ones that were used in this attack. Quite sophisticated. They work usually with special forces, but they want to scale up their efforts. And they say that where other companies are focused on producing kind of quite expensive drones, they're focused on just producing a lot of cheap drones, and hoping that they can be as effective as Mavics have been in this war, the kind of the airborne drones. And so they can effectively replace a rifleman, just have a small robot with a Kalashnikov moving onto the battlefield and being very high maneuverable.
Have you already published this, or when can we see it or read about it?
Next week, it will be out next week.
Okay, look forward to seeing that one. Thanks for talking to us about it in advance. Now, you have written a fascinating dispatch about the Ukrainian drone battalion's long-range strikes into Russia. You wouldn't want to disclose exactly where that location is, I'm sure, but can you tell us a bit about the kind of launch sites they're using?
I can't tell you very much about the kind of launch sites they use. Um, I mean, these are big drones. They travel, up to 1,000 kilometers, so they need a significant space to be launched from, and they launch them in squadrons, several at a time from different places, trying to overwhelm Russian defenses. And they use these in conjunction with other weapons like British-supplied Storm Shadow missiles or ATACMS, and lots of smaller decoy drones, which are designed to exhaust the Russians' anti-aircraft missiles. And then after the decoys have gone through, then the main drones, after the decoys have exhausted the Russian anti-aircraft batteries, then the main drones kind of fly through these gaps. They try and avoid also the best defended spaces along the Russian border, and then they penetrate very deep inside Russia. And we've seen them enjoyed great success hitting Russian oil refineries and gas production facilities. We've seen about 20 from 30 of these really major facilities going up in smoke, huge blazes at those facilities, probably inflicting kind of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of damage on Russia's economy, and also depriving Russia of vital fuel for its tanks and jets.
We've seen an uptick in these number of these attacks throughout the month of January, haven't we? Do you get the sense that this is something we're going to see more of, that they have the backup and the supplies to do so?
Yeah, Ukraine has realized this is a really effective strategy. They also told me about military targets they've been hitting, such as air bases, and the damage that they were doing on Russian jets and the infrastructure, importantly, that supplies Russian jets. The kind of the fuel storages, the ammunition supply places, and that's having a really strong impact on Russia's ability to wage an aerial war on Ukraine. We've seen actually that there are a lot less glide bombs falling on frontline positions than there were previously. Soldiers have talked along the front have talked to me about this. We used to get hit all the time with Russian glide bombs, and now it's fewer and fewer. And that's because the Russians are having to fly from air bases that are further away because they've been pushed back by these attacks by the long-range Ukrainian drones.
And these battalions that you met, who are they exactly, and how well trained are they?
So we met the 14th UAV Regiment. It's a mix of former Special Forces soldiers who are very, very highly trained. The commander of that regiment completed the US-designed Special Forces qualification course, which is a really grueling course known as the Q course. And he'd also completed 121 high-altitude, low-opening parachute jumps, which are very, very difficult, very grueling, and showed some of his character. A lot of the people that he's working with are also former Special Forces guys. They also have engineers, and they have some support in terms of intelligence from Western countries as well.
And the commander of the 14th UAV Regiment told you about their first successful operation to the east of Rostov in Russia. What did he tell you? And did you get a real sense of accomplishment when he was talking to you, in that he was able to take the fight on the offensive into Russia?
Yeah, I think that was a pivotal moment for them because they realized this technology worked, that Russia had such a large area to defend that it would struggle to do it. And also the Russians were obviously taken by surprise and completely unprepared for such a deep, long-range strike deep inside their territory, and they weren't ready for it. And in that attack, he said that they had basically been able to wipe out all the aircraft on an airbase near the border. The Russians had left out in the open fighter jets, bombers, fuel and ammunition, which helped them destroy it. Now, we weren't able to verify those claims, but obviously the way that they've scaled up the attacks and the way that they've used them so effectively on things that we can tell from open source, seeing oil refineries on fire in that way, we can see that they're obviously getting through the Russian defenses and they're obviously effective.
And have you seen, or did they tell you about any ways that they've noticed that the Russians have responded to this mounting threat they're posing? How have they adapted their defences, and what kinds of threats are the Ukrainian battalions themselves facing?
Well, they're obviously the launch sites and the battalions themselves are obviously a high priority target for the Russians. And they talked about having received radio intercepts about how the Russians were searching for them, looking for them in order to counter them with a ballistic missile strike or something very fast, a fast reaction to hit them at the launch site, or to try and individually target, find out, identify who the members of this regiment are, and then individually target them. So they're obviously on a kind of hit list for the Russians. But they take, very serious precautions to avoid that happening. They're very secretive. They don't often speak to the media. We were very privileged to be given access to join them on a launch mission and to find out so much information about what it is that they do. And they also, one of the reasons they're drawn from special forces is that they're highly organized, they're very intelligent, and they get stuff done very quickly and efficiently. So they get to the launch site, they launch these drones, and then, within about 20 minutes, they're off again, and it's difficult for the Russians to target them.
And last time we spoke, Maxim, you were talking about the threat that Russia was posing with its drones that are immune to electronic warfare because they use fiber-optic cables instead of radio signals. New video seems to have emerged purporting to show that Ukraine can detect these drones now with a mobile radar station. Have you seen or heard much about this?
But that's another thing that's being kept quite secretive, but it's very interesting. I mean, the war is causing technological advances that are happening so rapidly, it's sometimes difficult to keep up. Now, I suspect that the radar is able to detect the very large spooling device, which spools out the fiber optic cable. I mean, you have to have 10 kilometers of even this very thin fiber optic thread, and that creates quite a big lump on top of a drone. And I suspect that is what they're able to detect, because it gives the aircraft a slightly bigger profile. But there's still a big problem of how you then engage that drone. You know, we've seen some kind of rudimentary efforts shooting down things with what look like shotguns appeared on drones. Maybe there's a way that the Ukrainians can find to cut these wires in the air. But, you know, they're still having a really big impact on the front line, particularly in Kursk, where, you know, Ukrainian soldiers are very worried about them. They say they've all practiced their shooting because they want to be able to shoot these down with a shotgun or even their Kalashnikovs. And that's what they're actually doing. That's the most effective way at the moment to counter these drones. I mean, I heard a story, I don't know if it's an apocryphal story or not, but the story of one soldier who saw a fiber optic drone going past him, and the cable was unspooling, and apparently he grabbed it and bit through it to stop it hitting a position. We'll see if that's true, because there were some rumours that he was going to be awarded a medal.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. If you'd like to be the first to get exclusive content, you can sign up for membership with the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest news, or read it on thetimes.com. My thanks to our producer today, Louis Sykes, and to you for watching. Bye for now.